All right. Welcome, one and all, to the Scorched Earth Political Podcast. I am your host, John. I hope you know that by now. There will be a test at the end of this podcast. If you could hit that like and subscribe button, feel free to leave a comment. I try to personally answer them all. And, you know, it's a good day. We're broadcasting this, recording this on Thursday. And it seems like from all preliminary indications that Hamas will be releasing hostages early next week. Obviously, Donald Trump is planning a trip there to be there for the signing because, it's all about him. Let's get my picture in the paper. Let me be able to get that Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm starting to get a little optimistic. I personally don't trust Israel. I do not trust anything they do. But maybe Hamas does. I will tell you this. When this war ends, whenever that is, Israel is going to send Mossad and they are going to they are going to hunt down Hamas straight up. And everybody in Hamas who's in negotiations or anything like that, them and their families are going to be targets. I'm telling you right now, it's just the way Israel operates. They are vengeant. And then on top of that, they're vengeant again. And we had a cabinet meeting today, and Donald Trump, he's surrounded by anywhere but like 10 or 12 of his butt kisser sycophants who are in his administration. And they all were talking about how he deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. And I'm a little conflicted here. First of all, it is an amazing thing if we can get an end to this. But the price that we had to pay to get to this point, I wish that could be also weighed on the Trump administration. You know, what they decided to do, and I'm just, this isn't your mom's podcast. I'm just going to come out and say it, is they realized they could not beat Hamas. It was kind of like the issue we had in Vietnam when we fought the Viet Cong. They went underground, they were in the jungle. They weren't going to stand up there and let us shoot them, right? Hamas is hiding. They're in tunnels, they're in buildings, they're in hospitals, whatever. So what Israel did, and I really wish this, I mean, it did get play, but I don't think as a military strategy anybody really talked about it, is they decided what we're going to do is starve out the indigenous people. We are going to starve out the whole country till we can bring Hamas to their knees. Now, and they've done an amazing job of that, right? They've sparked a humanitarian crisis. The UN says there's starvation and a famine crisis. For the last 3 months, at least, that we know of, 12 people a day have died from starvation, just from starvation. And what they've done is they couldn't beat them militarily. So what they were going to do, like I said repeatedly, is they're starving out the entire country. The UN's condemned them. Basically, the whole world's condemned them, except for Trump. Trump has enabled it. If you remember over 2 months ago, when the first highlights of the starvation were making their way into the media and to the local news and the national news, that he sent over Steve Witkoff and Mike Huckabee, and literally two bigger idiots you couldn't send to any type of crisis. They went there, toured a couple places, escorted by Israel, came back, and were supposed to solve it. Never even heard one suggestion. Like, we're going to let Israel do what Israel does. And to think about it, when we went into Iraq, which was literally about as stupid as anything we've ever done, that we did not starve out the indigenous people as we tried to confront the Taliban, ISIS, Al Qaeda, whatever the hell it's called, right? The enemy. Let's just call it the enemy. We did not starve them out. We did not starve out the indigenous people in Vietnam, in Korea, in Afghanistan, the major 4 wars in basically our lifetimes, right? Last 100 years. There is rules of war, but Israel doesn't play by them, and Trump didn't play by them. And I wonder if part of this military strategy, which is really nobody's talking about, if that was what Trump also said, well, that's how I'm going to get the Nobel Peace Prize. And obviously he wants the Nobel Peace Prize because he is a narcissist. He is self-aggrandizing, and he wants to be like his big brother, Barack Obama. Now, the problem that Trump has, and we all know this, is that Barack Obama, on the first day he was born on this earth, had more character, morality, and integrity than Donald Trump will have in his 80 years on this planet. Donald Trump could live for 500 years. He wouldn't have 1/10 the modicum of the character that Barack Obama has. But Barack Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize, deservedly so, for strengthening international diplomacy. Well, Donald Trump has lusted for that. And he thinks that this or the Ukraine, he had 2 wars. He obviously is doing a terrible job in Ukraine. And we have in reports that Russia just launched its latest offensive on the energy infrastructure in Ukraine. I don't know enough about that to report it, but those are the preliminary indications from the news wires. And Donald Trump will probably get a new Nobel Peace Prize. We've seen the stories where he's telling his envoys to hit up the Netherlands, the Dutch, the Indy, to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize because he craves it so much because he wants to be Barack Obama, but he never can be. You know, Barack Obama's problem was he was a dignified black man, and that is something Donald Trump cannot stand. He cannot stand that man being of color is so much more substantial, so much more worthy, so much more amazing than he can ever hope to be. I don't care how many terms he's in. I don't care how he destroys everything. He is nothing because he came from nothing and he believes in nothing. And that is absolutely unequivocally the difference between him and Barack Obama. He may get it. I don't know. But starving out the Palestinian people for the last 7-8 months, it's a war crime. And really, as soon as this war ends, I wish they'd bring Netanyahu and Trump on war criminal charges, war crimes. Take them to the Hague. Let's go. Let's get it going. That won't happen. Countries are too powerful. They only bring war crimes against poor countries, not the rich. Let's be honest, George Bush, Dick Cheney should have been brought up on war crimes for things that happened in Iraq. But you don't have to do that because you're the most powerful military country in the world. I really wish when they put that award on the wall of Nobel Peace Prize, if he gets it, and I pray he doesn't, because I think the sum of the accumulation of what it took to get that is a negative because of the tens of thousands of people who were killed, dismembered, and starved so that they could bring an end to this war. I don't know. Leave a comment. Tell me how you really feel because I'm glad the war's coming to an end. The 1.6 million Palestinians have lost 10% of their population to death, starvation, or dismemberment. And that's a big number, 160,000 in 2 years. That's a big number. But, I'm glad the war's over because I didn't think the humanitarian crisis was ever going to end for this. And if we can figure out a way to let Palestine have its own state and be able to have their own autonomy, have their own truth, then maybe if that's the price is, we got to give that narcissist on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue the Nobel Peace Prize. F it. Go ahead and give it to him. Let him join the ranks of Woodrow Wilson, Theodore Roosevelt, Barack Obama, Al Gore, and Jimmy Carter. Kumbaya, man. If that floats your boat, Trump, hey, whatever. Let's just start feeding the Palestinian people because they've been suffering for way too effing long. All right. At the cabinet meeting, and basically, I'm sure most of you have seen these cabinet meetings. I've actually watched one on a live stream, and it is 2 hours of Donald Trump being surrounded by sycophants, butt kissers, in his cabinet, who basically they go around and they go, Mr. Trump, you have done the most incredible job ever in the history of the world, and you have saved us from annihilation, and you're blah, 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 blah. Well, today, it was a 2-hour infomercial for him to get the Nobel Peace Prize. Oh, you've done something nobody ever thought could happen in the Middle East, that you brought peace. Remember Jimmy Carter in 79? Yeah, well, he did. But I digress. we're going to forget about that because everything that happened before Trump came into office doesn't really exist in their ecosphere. Remember that great president, Barack Obama? And Robert Kennedy spoke. He got his little perfunctory thing out. And then he said, you know, this Trump administration is like a wing of the Arkham Asylum. That's the mental health. That's the mental asylum in Batman where the Joker, the Penguin, the Riddler, and all those other characters, Bane, are housed. And then they break out and cause, Batman's got to fight. We don't got no Batman. And those people have all escaped. They're running the government. And Robert Kennedy came out with just literally the most batshit crazy thing I have heard. He said that boys who got circumcisions are 2 times more likely to get autism because he heard about 2 studies. There's no reputable study that indicates anything about that. Okay. Then Trump chimed in because he's got to do his best imitation of, I'm going to be the Joker, but I'm also going to be Hannibal Lecter because I want everybody to die. He said, yeah. And it's also when you combine it with Tylenol, it's very likely to get autism. I'm like, Jesus criminy. Like, there's that Dr. Nick on The Simpsons who's literally the most incompetent human being. That guy would probably be the smartest person in the Trump administration. All honesty. It's like, wow, they really said that. I mean, we're getting to the point where bleach injections or light in bloodstreams are actually sounding logical. Like, wow, I wonder how long till this administration starts doing bloodletting, leeches, rhino horn are going to be the new medical advances they start pushing, and the only ones they pay for, like conversion therapy for people of alternative lifestyles. But I was starting to really think, like, do they want Americans to live? And then it dawned on me, no, they don't. They don't want us to live. Because I'm sure this is part of a passage in Project 2025 we have yet to read that, hey, let's just call about 20% of Americans, then we don't have to pay a Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. It'll be a cost positive situation. Yeah, okay. I mean, that is the chief medical officer and the president of the United States saying autism is caused by circumcision. I know they're dicks, but man, that's taken it a little too far, right? All right. Let's also talk. We have a little Epstein file update. Seems like Eric Swalwell, the great congressperson from California, dropped a salacious little bit on Thursday on an X post when he said, and I quote, I've spoken to a lot of the House Republicans and they've confided that Trump's movement/support is fading fast. And one told me the Epstein palm is about to drop and no one wants to defend a pedo protector. It's just a matter of time. As we've noted, Speaker Johnson won't bring Congress back into session. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene is telling him to do it. Let me tell you, when she's telling you to do something and she has the moral high ground, you're really underwater. He won't do it because the Arizona Congresswoman, Arleta, I forgot her last name, was elected a couple weeks ago, and she has vowed she will be the 218th House member to sign onto the DOJ needs to release all the Epstein files. And it makes you wonder, like, why haven't the Republicans done that? What's really going on? I mean, there's obviously some serious stuff going on there. And obviously, the inference is Trump and his best friend Epstein were pillaging, abusing these young women for years. We've seen the Christmas card, we've seen the birthday card, we've seen all that cute little stuff. And I want to see these rich, white, elite assholes be brought to justice. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm sure there's some statute of limitations or some loophole that them and their country club lawyers are going to get out of. But I do want them to be exposed. I do want them to be shamed. I do want them to be humiliated on every level a human being can be. And also, I want to see some adjudication. I want to see some credibility. I want to see some validity for these amazing women who have had to suffer at the hands of these rich white people for so long, and nobody wanted to hear their story. You know, it was a couple weeks ago, they all gathered on the Capitol steps. People heard their stories. It got about 10 minutes of airplay and then it faded away. I want to see these files. I want to see this. I want to see these men shamed. And I mean shamed on a level we can't even imagine. I want their lives and their careers to be destroyed. They're rich. You know, maybe they can hunker down. I don't know. But especially that SOB at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Because I'm telling you, he was part of the ringleader. We all know it, right? All right. Finally, let's talk about in the Trump administration, there is literally a clown circus going on. And they are all racing to see who can be the biggest idiot on any certain day. Well, it seems like we got a new leader in the clubhouse. That'll be Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy. He is now threatening to fire these air traffic controllers who may call out sick during the government shutdown. Now, let's figure out what's going on here. Air traffic controllers are considered essential government workers. So even during a shutdown, they have to go to work. And like we've talked about, they're actually losing money every day they go to work. They go to work, they got to buy lunch, they got to buy gas, they have to get supplies, things like that, right? They're not getting paid. And then Trump, of Monday of this week, floated the idea that, hey, maybe we're not going to give them that retro pay. Like, wow, can you imagine if that was you or I? And we were going to work under good faith. That's what these great Americans are doing in the government, and saying, okay, I will do all these things without pay in the promise that, and the promise comes from Donald Trump signed a law in 2019. It was called the Fair Treatment of Employees Act, which is such an oxymoron when you put Trump's name in that sentence, that they would get they'd get retro pay when the government came back to functioning. Well, you know, now you're sitting there going, I got to spend all this money and he might not pay me. Like, I'm doing this for free. I'm doing this, you know, the most grift heavy, corruption heavy president who everything is about every bloody dollar is not going to pay these people what he owes them. Yeah, it sounds just like all the contractors he broke or he bankrupted when he was building all those buildings in Manhattan and New Jersey and all the other places. Yeah, he's going to do that to the FAA. How you doing? Now, we go down the rabbit hole a little farther and we find out that there's been over 15,000 air delays, an average of 2.5 hours each in the United States since Monday. It's up 53% from what it typically is. We're only talking 4 days right now, and they've already had that many delays. In an entire week, they typically have of 2 or 2.5 hours or longer. They only have 3,000 in the entire country over 7 days. So tell me how sideways this is all going. You know, the FAA was shorted of their minimum projections by the union of 3,500 people. DOJ came in and actually cut back money, enforcement, and personnel at the FAA back in February. We don't have an actual number of how many FAA air traffic controllers they cut back, but I'm sure it was a good number. How are you feeling now? Are you going to get up in the airplane? I'm not. Tell you that right now. These are brave men and women who do a very tough job. And then as I was researching this story, I found out that the typical air traffic controller has to work mandatory overtime and 6 days a week. They typically log anywhere between 50 and 60 hours, where a significant amount even accumulate more than 60 hours. So now think about this. You're not getting paid. The president has said he might not pay you retro, and you got to work 60 plus hours. Yeah, welcome to America. We're making America great, just not for air traffic controllers or anybody who's in a union or a federal worker. Yeah, funny thing. I'm sure ICE is still getting paid, right? Haven't heard any complaints out of that. Seems like they're more. So you're telling me ICE is more essential than an air traffic controller? Really? The person who is making sure, who is ensuring that a plane gets from point A to point B isn't as valuable as somebody who's running into a Home Depot to chase after somebody that might be an illegal immigrant, but they don't know because the only thing they need is they got brown skin. Yeah, right? Habla Espanol, right? All I can say to that is no bueno. All right. Thank you for watching. If you could, hit that like and subscribe button, leave a comment. I'll try and respond to them, and we'll see you soon on the Scorched Earth Political Podcast.